Norway. And now I suggest that you hold an experiment. Just imagine, just to understand the scale and the atrocity of such discussions, how the West would feel if third countries' special experts would publicly discuss the explosion of many bridges in Great Britain, in Portugal, somewhere on the pages of the Times, the Washington Post. What would they do to these editions? And what would they do to the experts who come up with such suggestions? The tribunals of the Russian Federation, on the basis of evidence collected by the investigative committee of the Russian Federation, still announce sentences to Ukrainian militants, which we have already discussed, which we discuss every week. Crimes against civilians in the Donetsk People's Republic. The court sentenced a bandit from the Nazi grouping Azov, Zhirnovsky, to 28 years of prison, Veslovsky and Kachirin to 22 years in prison, and Kirilenko was received a life sentence. They are responsible for the killings of civilians in March 2022. No Ukrainian criminals will be able to escape responsibility. They will be punished to the utmost severity of law. They should not believe that they will be able to escape responsibility and to escape judgment. Speaking about alternative scenarios which could put an end to the conflict at the early stage, very few remember that 10 years ago, on April 17th, 2014, in Geneva, a unique meeting of foreign ministers of Russia, United States, the European Union, and Ukraine took place. In its final statement, besides the need to de-escalate the crisis in Donbass, let me remind you that Kiev on April the 15th, 2014, launched a punitive operation against the southeast population. This statement contained an urge to launch a nationwide dialogue which would bring together all regions of Ukraine. However, as it was the case from the agreement as of February the 21st, 2014, between the opposition and the President Yanukovych, any chance for political settlement of the crisis and preserving peace in the state, it was wasted. Everyone knows what happened next. Kiev stamped out the word dialogue from its policy and proceeded to punitive methods. Washington and Brussels' response was usual. You simply do not understand. It is something of a different kind. In Kiev, they try to forget one more date, April the 13th, 2014. Then the march of Zaporizhzhia people took place. It was disseminated, and the dissemination was organized by the money of Ukrainian tycoon Kolomoisky. These marches were targeted against all those civilians who were proponents of Ukrainian federalization. The Zaporizhzhia police was trying to protect the civilians from Bandera soldiers who were singing the Soviet epoch, the Great Patriotic War epoch songs to these provocations. Law enforcement officers were injured, but they did not give up, as was the command, as was the order of the Nazis from private sector. This is one of the reasons why in September 2022, more than 93% of the voters in the Zaporizhzhia region voted in favor of joining the Russian Federation. Now let me cite one very important figure. Every second, the US spends $80,000 on Ukraine. Mr. Tuberville, senator, said that Americans cannot waste such an amount of money. We understand quite well that for the United States of America, Ukraine, for the political elite, is nothing but a business project. It is astonishing, but no matter what ideas and what ideology they support, they speak about nothing but money. They only count, and they count in dollars, the lives of people, the future of the country, and the future of the people. At the very same day, the American conservative published an article by Devlin. He believes that Biden administration downplayed the amount of financial assistance provided for Kiev. One of the main secrets of Washington is that no one knows how much money was really spent by the US to support Ukraine. He is convinced that the amount of financial assistance exceeds $125 billion. You understand quite well why Washington hides the true amount of money spent on Ukraine, why they conceal the true funding which was dedicated to the project named American-Style Ukraine. The response is very simple. It refers to a global corruption, to the global corruption of the elites which are in power in the United States. This is nothing but a way to bring the money from the territory of the United States and to distribute them among someone else. These sums of money return to the United States at the very same moment, to the very same point where they are awaited for by those who spent them, by the structures of the collective West. On April the 16th, Zelensky signed an inhumane mobilization law, which not merely violates but cancels and demolishes any rights of Ukrainians, no matter where the Ukrainians are, inside the country or outside the country. In former recruitment points and in current organization centers, people should update their personal data. This is done in order to receive the data from the people who will be sent to the guaranteed death, it is understood by everyone, even by the proponents of Zelensky. It is quite predictable, but this law doesn't define any time limits. Even disabled persons can be recruited according to this law. Those who are not willing to abide by the law will be fined. Abroad, we are facing a panic. There are kilometer-long lines of Ukrainian citizens who are merely storming the embassies, who are trying to renew their passports and not to come back to Ukraine. After this date, they can be denied consular services. This is the fate prepared for Ukraine by the United States of America, when by their own hands, with their own money, they were perpetrating an anti-constitutional coup d'etat back then in Maidan in 2014. Is this a democracy, an American-style democracy in Ukraine? Does this have anything to do with the human rights and with the universal freedoms? This inhumane mobilization law will only increase the corruption in Ukraine. It will sow disunity in the community, but it will hardly bring more soldiers to the Ukrainian armed forces. Now we can see democratic methods of Ukrainian soldiers to the Ukrainian armed forces, but I want to say one thing. They are afraid to say this in Ukraine. Everyone is afraid of saying this. And on Bankova, they are also afraid, but we will. It is only the beginning. Zelensky only began the ultimate stage to kill the Ukrainian citizens in the American style. The matters will only get worse. On April the 16th, we marked a very tragic, a dramatic date. 9 years ago, Ales Bozina, a journalist, was killed close to his house. He fell victim to the Kiev regime because he was a threat to the existence of this regime, because he revealed the true character of the neo-Nazi forces who received power as a result of an anti-constitutional coup d'etat which was perpetrated with the help of outside forces. Ales Buzina was urging the Ukrainian forces to set the dialogue with the Donbas population. He was irritating the Kiev regime. He was threatened by Ukrainian radicals because his interpretation of the historical path of Ukraine did not coincide with the ideology of neo-Nazis. His civil position had a very high cost for him. He was killed because of this. We cannot open every aspect of these atrocities which are perpetrated by the hands of the Kiev regime at the will of the collective West on the territory of Ukraine. But we do everything we can so that to communicate as much information as possible to the international community. This all once again testifies to the need to bring to an end the special military operation. They all will be achieved.
Now I'd like to talk about terrorist attack by Ukrainian neo-Nazis against Russian medical workers. At all times, the Red Cross on a white background has been considered a kind of shield that protects medical workers, allowing them, including conditions of armed conflict, to do their work and save lives on both sides of the line of contact. However, moral principles and laws of humanism mean nothing to the Kiev regime. With medical cruelty, the Ukrainian militants hunt down medics who are providing assistance to victims of shelling and target them and attempt to destroy them and prevent from saving civilians. In 2022 until 2023, there were many cases of deliberate shelling and drone attacks by Ukrainian forces on doctors and healthcare facilities in frontline regions of Russia. 2024, this statistic doesn't become less. Here are some facts. On the 12th of January this year, Ukrainian Nazis twice attacked the Nikitsky district of Horlovka in the Donetsk Republic with drones. First, the attack hit employees of an energy company repairing infrastructure facility, and then medical workers who had come to treat the wounded. Two women were killed, one of them a medic, and 8 people were wounded, among them 3 ambulance workers. On the 13th of January this year, in the Kirsky district of Donetsk, the Bandera supported used a drone to attack a resuscitation vehicle that had come to visit a woman wounded by shelling. The driver of the car was injured. On the 20th of January this year in Horlovka, an ambulance paramedic was injured in course of her duties when she arrived as a woman wounded as a result of heavy artillery and rocket shelling. On the 4th of April, in Novokakhovka, Kherson region, neo-Nazis dropped a drone bomb on a repair team restoring mobile communications. 2 workers were killed and 1 was injured. One of the victims could have survived if the militants had not obstructed the work of the doctors by firing drones at the ambulance. The victim could not be saved. Hospitals, clinics, paramedic stations and other medical facilities in the Donetsk, Lugansk Republic, Belgorod, Bryansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kursk, and Kherson regions regularly come under fire from neo-Nazis. Since the beginning of April alone, at least 3 medical facilities have been hit by Ukrainian strikes. The 6th of April this year, the city hospital number 21 in Donetsk and the children's clinic number 4 in Belgorod were damaged. On the 15th of April this year, as a result of a shell hit, a medical clinic in the village of Murom in the Belgorod region caught fire. The above picture testifies to the deliberate nature of the strikes against medical establishments and aggression unleashed against medical workers and rescuers. Information on Ukraine's violation of international humanitarian law is regularly brought to the attention of the relevant international organizations and structures, including the United Nations system. But unfortunately, we have never heard the words of condolences, of support to those who became victims of the Kiev regime, being on his duty as a medic. We have never heard condemnations on the relevant structures of the United Nations, representing the Secretary General. Maybe this time they do not see who attacks and who are the victims. In February, data on statistics on attacks on medical facilities in the Donetsk, Lugansk, Bryansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions were submitted to the World Health Organization for inclusion in its health attack surveillance systems. What has been done by the WHO? This information was not reflected in its publications. In the case of accusations against Russia, international officials do not bother to look for evidence or reliable facts, and they just rush to express concern about the actions of the Russian armed forces, and suddenly become deaf and blind when it comes to the crimes of the Ukrainian armed forces against Russian civilians, and not only Russian, but the whole of the population. Remember, in Syria, then there were pseudo-civilian structures, entities working and engaged in provocative activities, like the white helmets that were caught in staging and violations. They talked about hitting the humanitarian workers, and they filmed movies that were nominated for international prizes. And here, under the attack of the Kiev regime, with the help of the Western weapons, real medics and doctors are killed, not with the uniform that was designed by Western PR campaigns, but who have long experience working in hospitals, in ambulances, and nobody wants to see anything in the West. We do not speak about the population, we speak about the relevant structures and the mass media in the West. This shameful behavior does not only discredit the organizations, it downplays the confidence towards such organizations they represent. For our part, we're not going to leave the aforementioned crimes unpunished. Russians' investigative bodies are recording all facts of atrocities committed by Ukrainian armed groups, including the killing of civilians, medical workers, and rescuers, shelling of civilian objects. The perpetrators will be identified and held accountable to the extent of the law. And another thing. There is a song, I don't see anything, I can't hear a thing, I won't tell anybody. On the 15th of April, the UN Security Council briefing on the 15th of April this year in connection with the Ukrainian attacks on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant took place in early April. That clearly demonstrated the United States-led collective West coalition continues to create an aura of all permissiveness, turn a blind eye to the crimes committed by Kiev. However, this time the Western countries apparently were carried away by their play. They gave themselves and the Zelensky regime away. Without noticing it, they expressed themselves in the form of an ultimatum: hand over control over the Zaporizhzhia power plant, and then it will be stopped being shelled. Thus, they did not only publicly admitted that Ukraine is a source of threats to the plant's safety, but also actually confirmed their complicity in the dangerous attacks on the plant. And the most important thing that they confirmed, their blackmail. And there is one detail that it is nuclear blackmail. The position of the IAEA Director General Grossi deserves special attention. On the one hand, he is actively involved in the political games around the plant. He formulates some principles of plant safety and makes various initiatives. On the other hand, when it is necessary to name those responsible for the attacks on the plant, Rafael Grossi becomes silent and begins to cover by the IAEA technical mandate. This ambiguous behavior creates, to put it mildly, not the best impression of the role that the Director General of the agency is trying to play in these events. We emphasize once again, we regard keeping silent about the crimes of the Kiev regime and even more so attempts to justify them. We regard this as complicity. Passing to and moving to other topics regarding the international agenda, regarding the lack of security, we've noticed the information about France, and we have drawn attention to the information from the General Staff of the French Armed Forces on the transfer to NATO Operational Command for the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle and escort vessel participation in the alliance naval exercises in the Mediterranean. For the first time in its history, France is placing under NATO command the flagship of the national navy, which is a key element of the maritime component of the nuclear deterrent force. This decision is erosion of France's national sovereignty, and this erosion is in the area of nuclear deterrence. This move is on a par with recent statement by French President Emmanuel Macron on the Europeization of France's nuclear arsenal. Now, it seems that the French president has gone very far, and he is moving to NATOization of the arsenal. Since the time of President Charles de Gaulle, the French nuclear arsenal has been considered one of the pillars of the French national sovereignty and independent foreign policy. Largely in order to preserve its strategic autonomy and sovereignty of decision-making, Charles de Gaulle withdrew his country from the alliance's military command in 1966. It is deeply symbolic that it was the transfer to NATO command of the aircraft carrier named in honor of the founder of the Fifth Republic that ended the era of Paris's autonomy in the international arena. Today, we do not know whether Emmanuel Macron understands what is happening and whether his counterparts do understand it either. We do not know whether the French audience is informed about that, but some experts just crying, making cries about what is happening. Today we have seen a transformation of the foreign policy of modern France, which is increasingly moving away from the Gaullist tradition and losing its former independence, dissolving in the common approaches of the European Union and NATO. Such decision by Paris once again convince us that when discussing issues of European and global security, strategic and global stability and arms control, the French nuclear arsenal should be considered inseparably linked with the American and British arsenals. This is a conclusion made by the French president. Now about cancelling the culture and about the culture that cannot be cancelled. The National Archives of Romania cancelled Romanian National Archive cancelled a field rental agreement with our embassy in Bucharest, which, as part of an educational campaign, provided for the private screening of remarkable Russian films, spectacular and life-affirming films about history and modernity of cosmonautics. The decision was pushed through the biased press led by the local edited board of Free Europe and the Romanian Ministry of Culture. This is a typical manifestation of the so-called cancellation of Russian culture, which fits into the general pattern of the West's actions, which seeks to impose all-encompassing censorship in the fight against dissent. Romanian film lovers who have repeatedly expressed their interest in seeing these films translated in Romanian will be the losers. Attempts to pull back the Iron Curtain on modern culture are doomed to failure. On with festivals in Berlin, Cannes, San Sebastian, Venice, and Karlovy Vary. It was first held in 1935 with Sergei Mikhailovich Eisenstein heading the jury. In 2023, the festival was attended by 38,000 spectators, and in the competition and non-competition programs, films from 64 countries were presented. It's known that the United States said and cried out loud that we were cancelled, that we would never be a center of the world culture, and it's ridiculous. More than 230 films will be screened at this year's festival. Authors from China, India, Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Spain, Germany, Serbia, USA, and many other countries and have already confirmed their arrival at the festival. The BRICS Festival will be also held as part of this year's Moscow Festival. Its program will include feature-length films from Russia, China, Egypt, India, Iran, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil. Russia will be represented by the film Abnormal, directed by Ilya Malanin. We are convinced that the future lies in the free, multilinear, and diverse development of cultures. In the broadest dialogue of the humanitarian communities of the multipolar world that is emerging today. And the BRICS Film Festival is intended to be part of this dialogue. The countries of our association have traditionally demonstrated a high degree of cooperation in these spheres, including cinema, the development of cultural heritage and identity, despite the attempts the collective West to cancel the culture of Russia and other undesirable countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We invite all film fans as well as media to attend and cover the film festival events. And we will place the links in the transcript of our today's briefing. And we also have a piece of news on our multilateral cooperation and our relations with Asian countries is developing, and this area in January Vientiane, the ministerial meeting took place on tourism, and the Southeast Asia, as we know, is a favorite holiday destination of Russian tourists, and we hope that they reached agreements would help increase the tourist flow. The G10 of ASEAN has shown interest in digitalization and has wanted to become our digitalization process partner, and the relations with our organizations fighting terrorism. The recent events in Crocus City Hall has testified to the necessity to collaboration in this area, and the communique of the Foreign Ministry of this association also demonstrates this. The working group of ASEAN also dealt with that. And in St. Petersburg, during the meeting of the High Representatives responsible for security issues, will hold a sector related to ASEAN. The recent Jakarta meeting of the relevant mechanisms and the joint committee and management committee have enlarged the areas of our cooperation, so with a focus on such projects as energy, digitalization, and development of smart cities. Humanitarian and others events have been held by the the Moscow Diplomatic University, and all 10 countries took part in the events. We also have informal contacts with them, and we want this format to be on a permanent basis. We wanted to develop plans for the future, and on the 25th of 26th of April, the meeting that will be held in St. Petersburg by the vice ministers will be a very important component for preparing for the foreign ministers in Vientiane. And this year, we commemorate our joining to the treaty to the Asian countries, and this anniversary will be celebrated in autumn. On
On April the 11th, 1945, the prisoners of Buchenwald, one of the greatest and the largest concentration camps, raised an armed uprising carefully planned with the help of underground clandestine organizations and Soviet prisoners of war. The Nazis had no time to destroy the evidence of their atrocities, and the whole world saw the true face of Nazism. During World War II, the Nazis set up a huge network of concentration camps. The figures are horrifying, just think of it. More than 14,000 concentration camps held more than 20 million of people as a result of torture, medical experiments, hunger, cold, and exhausting labor. Millions of people died. Let me remind you that back then, on March the 19th, 1944, the Red Army of the 65th Army of General Pavel Batov released the prisoners of the Nazi death camp Zaporizhzhia. 33,480 people, and among them, no matter how often you count, you cannot be indifferent when you say this. 15,960 children were among them. The Red Army also saved from death the prisoners of Majdanek near Lublin in Poland in July 1944. Later, Soviet troops freed the prisoners of Auschwitz in January 1945, and Sachsenhausen in April 1945, and Ravensbrück April 1945, Stutthof in May 1945, and many other death factories. And what does this mean when we say they freed the prisoners? It was very long ago, and now it seems, well, many people believe they just approached these camps, said those sacred words, they showed their credentials, said the password, and freed the people. The Soviet troops liberated the prisoners of the concentration camps at the cost of their own lives. At their own free will, they were given and sacrificing their own lives to save the people of different ethnicities, citizenship, religions. They did not even know what their political ideology was, what parties they belonged to. They knew nothing about it, but the Red Army soldiers, the Soviet army, the troops, gave their lives to free these people. And this courageous deed, and it is a courageous deed, it is a huge self sacrifice. They are trying to stamp it out from the pages of the history by demolishing the monuments, by rewriting the textbooks, by stamping out document libraries. And now they are not only engaged in political bullying, it is even justified from the legal point of view for those who do not want to lose the memory but to preserve it. In this regard, we drew attention to the notifications received in early April this year by the Russian embassy in Berlin from the administrations of the memorial complexes on the site of the former Nazi concentration camps of Buchenwald, der Mittelbau, Sachsenhausen, and Ravensbrück. What did they contain? Of the official Berlin, be it one day or another, these are not some private enterprises. Perhaps you can think that they were inviting us to join shared historical work or to organize the repairment and the renovations of the exhibitions which tell about the contribution of the Soviet troops to the liberation of these death camps. It is impossible to say this. It is impossible to believe this as well. But our embassy in Berlin received the notification that the attendance of Russian officials in the commemorative events to mark the 79th anniversary of the liberation of the presidents of the death factories was undesirable. Those who made the essence of their life to preserve the memory of the Great Patriotic War, the Second World War, who contributed their own efforts, who worked fulfilling their duties together with the implementation and fulfillment of their civil position to save every monument at the territory of Europe, which were demolished in Bulgaria, unfortunately in the Baltic states, in Poland, and in other cities of the so-called enlightened Europe. They are undesirable. These people who organized practical work to preserve the memorials, to preserve the death tombs, they are undesirable. These people who facilitated civilian initiatives, the Immortal Regiment, which has taken place all over the world, they also helped the community who voiced their aspiration to hold these social activities. They helped them while proving to the local authorities to support and encouraging the local authorities to support these initiatives to preserve the historical memory. We regard this provocative attack as one more step made by the German side aimed at further politicization of the historical memory of the course and outcome of the Second World War. We believe that this is the demolition of the historical truth and the historical memory of World War II from the part of the official Berlin, which supports this attitude and encourages this attitude. This largely explains the fact that the German authorities have not yet responded to the note sent to the German Foreign Ministry by the Russian embassy in March of this year, demanding that Berlin officially recognizes as acts of genocide the crimes committed by the Third Reich on the territory of the USSR. I would like to assure the German side that they won't be able to remain silent. We will continue our persistent our persistent efforts to preserve and bring to the general public the historical truth about the crimes of German Nazism. We will work to ensure that the government of the Federal Republic of Germany makes humanitarian repayments to the non-Jewish survivors of the siege of Leningrad. Russian diplomats in Germany this year will, together with the veterans and compatriots, will decently honor the memory of prisoners of Nazi concentration camps and Soviet soldiers who gave their lives to free Europe from the terror of the Third Reich, including when they were saving the lives of the German people and the decency, the honor of the people of Germany, bringing them back to the spirit of humanity. In April and May, the diplomatic staff of the Russian diplomatic and consular missions in Germany will lay wreaths at memorials and war graves in various German federal states. We should especially mention the cultural and humanitarian initiatives organized by Russian volunteers. I should mention now the project organized by Yelena Serpionova, a teacher and candidate of sciences. Many school students and German teachers from schools in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Luhansk, Tambov, Yekaterinburg, Tumen, Penza, Chelyabinsk, Vologda, Yelsk, Cherepevets, and the Orenburg region translated from German into Russian and recorded an audio guide to the memorial on the site of the former Ravensbrück concentration camp. Soviet prisoners constituted the largest group of Ravensbrück inmates. However, there is still no Russian language version of the audio guide to the memorial. Only German, English, French, Dutch, and Polish versions were available. In 2021, Yelena Serpionova approached the Ravensbrück Memorial 3 times with an initiative to translate and record an audio guide into the Russian language at her own expense, but German officials showed no interest in this initiative. The administration of the complex refused to discuss this issue with the Russian embassy in Germany. As a result, Russia decided to implement this project independently. Currently, the audio guide in Russian is available for free on a special website. During this work, the volunteers found out that the German version of the audio guide of 15 tracks with the memories of eyewitnesses and former prisoners of Ravensbrück does not contain a single comment of Soviet prisoners. Volunteers found the testimonies of Soviet prisoners and added them to the audio guide. We thank all those people who are not indifferent, who are actively involved and engaged in the project. We will cherish, we will preserve the memory not only of those who died and survived in the terrible concentration camps, but also pay tribute to those who liberated them. We are approaching to the holy holiday, the victory day over the Nazis. Let us be worthy of our grandfathers and fathers who were approaching this day at the cost of their lives. One more very important international date associated with this date. On April the 18th, we mark the International Day of Memorials and Historical Sites, which was established in 1982 by the International Assembly and the Council on Monuments and Sites, ICOMOS, and approved by the General Conference of UNESCO. Memorials are the cultural patterns of behavior of a nation. They support the continuity, the historical memory, implemented in the monumental art. It forms the identity of a people. It outlines the roadmap of the community. It influences the way they see their future. Currently, we have 32 sites of UNESCO World Heritage in our country, including 21 cultural sites, 31 candidate sites are on the preliminary list. The Russian Federation strictly adheres to its obligations in line with the international agreements, including the World Heritage Convention of 1972 and the Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflicts 1940 or 54. When holding special military operation, the armed forces of the Russian Federation undertake exhaustive measures to preserve the cultural sites in Ukraine. In its turn, the Kiev regime deliberately strikes against the social and cultural sites in Russia. We have repeatedly mentioned that we have cited concrete examples. We have been spreading this information on international platforms. The Kiev regime uses the cultural sites as a live shield, as a site for troops and equipment deployment. Kiev organized firing position in the high grounds where Svetogorsk Monastery of the Holy Assumption is situated. They are bringing objects of worship of Christianity to the West. In 2023, they transferred 16 unique icons from the National Museum of Arts, named after Bogdan and Varvara Hanenka. They are preparing to send to Europe icons, relics, and the church utensils to the Kiev Monastery of the Caves. They are demolishing the monuments and memorials to Gogol, Pushkin, Gorky, Bulgakov, Ostrovsky, Soviet and Russian generals Zhukov, Vatutin, Suvorov, all memorials to the soldiers who were fighting against the Nazis. They all are demolished in the Lvov region. Just imagine, 312 memorials were demolished only in 2023. Ukraine is following its civilized neighbors and patrons in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They demolish memorials to the soldiers. They encourage the acts of vandalism. Their state policy is aimed at rewriting the history to glorify the former accomplices to the fascists. The UN Human Rights Committee has repeatedly confirmed that it is illegitimate to demolish memorials. However, the authorities of the Baltic states pursued their policy. The data in Poland speaks for itself. Out of 561 memorial sites which was submitted together with the Polish side to the list of memorial sites of Soviet defenders of the motherland who died on the territory of Poland, only 19 of them are preserved until now. In essence, we are facing the undermining of ideological foundation of international relations system which was built after the World War II. The victory over Nazism is the cornerstone of the UN system which was set up on the basis of the anti-Hitler coalition. It is our sacred duty to preserve the memory of those who liberated the world from the Brown Plague, because there is only one step from the desecration of memorials to soldiers liberators to the glorification of Nazism, and we saw it. We saw it. How they applauded not to the neo-Nazis but to true Nazis who eliminated people according to the national aspect, how they applaud to them in the Canadian Parliament, how they build monuments to military, to the criminals of war at the territory of the Western states, as it happens in Ukraine. And it is not only the case with Ukraine, it is the case with the United States and with Canada. One more anniversary date. This year, Russia will mark 190 years since Dmitry Mendeleev was born. His name is given to the 58th International Chemistry Olympiad for school students. This contest for young chemists will take place since April the 21st till April the 26th in China. This year, we expect that the number of participants will be record high. For the first time in its history, the contest will take part outside the CIS states. the students from Altai region, Nizhegorodsky, Novosibirsk, Moscow, Samara, the Republic of Bashkortostan, and the Republic of Tatarstan will take part in the Olympiad. It will be the first experience of international cooperation. We are happy that this contest will take part at the equal and politicized basis, as it should be for the benefit of the whole humanity. We wish every success to our young participants. On April the 24th, we will mark the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. This memorial date was established by the UN General Assembly resolution back in 2018 at the initiative of Venezuela. The number of modern challenges is increasing. Among them, armed conflicts, international terrorism, eroding arms control, drug trafficking, organized crime, poverty. We can only overcome these problems if we join our efforts of all states. Those who work in the spirit of solidarity shared responsibility for the fate of the generation of today and of the future. That is why we should build an equal and effective system of cooperation. The United Nations organization is in the spotlight of international politics thanks to its universal legitimacy, the mandate. The organization has unique possibilities to elaborate effective responses to the challenges we face. A very important thing to do is not to block all these possibilities as it is done by the representatives of the collective West. The UN Charter has all its universal norms, the principle of non-interference into the internal affairs. They are relevant today as never before. Everyone should strictly adhere to the Charter in its interconnectedness, and its plenitude is key to the fulfillment of UN potential. Unfortunately, the authority and the credibility of the UN is dwindling due to the attempts of the West, who is trying to subdue the United Nations organization to its narrow, self-serving interests and to impose the concept of the rules-based world order instead of international law. The domination of the West is evident now. They are trying to exercise pressure over the UN General Assembly against the global South. The domination of the West in the UN Secretariat results in the following fact: more and more often it steers away from the impartial policy in line with the Article 10 of the UN Charter. Against this backdrop, Russia, due to its unique responsibility, its unique status as one of the founding states of the United Nations organization, advocates for the restoration of the status of the UN as the cornerstone of this international organization. The group of friends in defense of the UN Charter has proved its efficiency to counter the neo-colonial maneuvers of the so-called Golden Billion. We give a special role to the non-alignment movement, which brings together 120 states of the global South. We invite all the states with a constructive position to join our efforts to consolidate the multilateralism in international affairs.
And another topic. This year, the prize Vizov challenge as part of the Future Technologies Prize, an international nomination discovery was established for foreign scientists or citizens of the Russian Federation up to 35 years of age working outside the country. Applications are accepted until the 20th of May 2024, and there is 1 month left until the end to apply. The prize is awarded for fundamental research that provides prerequisites for the creation of future technologies with an implementation horizon of up to 3 to 10 years, which will influence the development of world science and technology. Scientists working in the STEM fields, including mathematics, physics, chemistry, biomedicine, astronomy, and engineering, can be nominated for the prize. The mission of the prize is to create a clear nomination, motivation, and aspiration among the younger generation to link their lives with science. Its other, no less significant task is to create a basis for sustainable and equitable international scientific dialogue. The importance of such a multilateral cooperation is reiterated by our country, which remains one of the undisputed leaders in this field. We invite scientists from all over the world, authors of ideas and inventions that can change the landscape of modern science and the life of every person, to take part in the prize competition. More information can be found on the website of this prize. And I'm eager to answer to your question. Международная жизнь. Are you with us? Yes. French President Emmanuel Macron proposed to introduce an Olympic truce for the duration of the Olympic Games in Paris. How does the Russian Foreign Ministry assess this initiative? Is this not a ploy to give respite to the Ukrainian armed forces that are being defeated on the battlefield? As for the motivation of Macron, we do not want to see into it. This is a test to his frankness. Should be the stop of the weapons shipments. And in practice, we see different discrepancies in NATO and the European Union that are aimed at aggressive rhetoric, at incitement of the Kiev regime and its aspirations to commit other crimes and silencing of the crimes committed by the regime. And there are no words of condemnation regarding the terrorist attacks perpetrated with the help of the Kiev regime against civilian infrastructure. That's all. So they want to be trusted and want and another issue regarding Ukraine. The Chinese president said that China is in favor of convening an international peace conference to resolve the Ukrainian crisis, which will be recognized both by Russia and Ukraine. How would you comment on this initiative? The initiative expressed by President Xi Jinping is in line with the document formulated by Beijing, China's position on the political settlement of the Ukrainian crisis, which presented on the 24th of February 2023. We highly appreciate the approaches set out therein by our Chinese friends and their sincere desire to promote a just and sustainable settlement. The provisions of this well-developed 12-point plan are in line with Russia's as it has been stated with Russia's vision and are worthy of becoming the basis for the solution to the Ukrainian crisis, and we are grateful to our Chinese partners for their deep understanding of the root causes of the crisis and for their firm defense of the position that any discussions on its resolution are futile without Russia's participation and taking into account our interests, especially in the area of security. Thank you. Another question, if you allow me. On the 10th of April, there was a debate in the European Parliament on, and I quote, on democratic presidential elections in Russia. How would you comment on this debate? You can say that it is a spiritual session. It seems so. I've seen in the fields like people holding hands around a table, and they want to appeal to the spirits of the dead. And it seems like that because there is no explanation It has become so ridiculous, and it would be more ridiculous if they didn't have anything to deal with in practice. They really have those questions like migration, like weapons coming from Ukraine, drug trafficking, rise in criminality, economic crisis, and unsettled issues within those countries and in the perimeters of European Parliament. They have everything to deal with, and instead they discuss elections in a country that has nothing to do with them. This is a ritualized, content-free event. It is hardly worth calling this action that took place in the virtual empty hall of the European Parliament a debate. Everything was reduced to a 20-minute exchange of views with the participation of the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, who presented his well-known set of anti-Russian maxims, this time with an assessment of the results of the presidential election in the Russian Federation. Nobody has asked him. Nobody is interested with his opinion. We believe so. We only doctors are interested, and only those who want to decipher of what he is trying to say. Nobody understands it. And for the European institutions, this election has become into an act of engineering in elections. They are not interested into the electors' opinion, not in the European Union, not outside. And another statement has become a demonstration under the guise of this concern. They interfere into other countries' internal affairs, and that's why this voting it gives such a range in the European Union, and they spent so much efforts in supporting the opposition and in provoking they should speak about the effectiveness of those who they taken a step or who have taken a stake on. Good afternoon, Maria Vladimirovna. We have three questions. The first one, the AIA wants to propose this year to Russia and Ukraine to assess the technical condition of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Has the AIA officially requested the Russian side to conduct such an inspection? If so, when can it take place? And it's known when the head of the agency, Grossi, will visit Russia. At the beginning, I would like to say that the mandate is the IAEA is a technical organization and does not have a mandate to practically conduct a nuclear safety and security assessment of nuclear facilities. It is within the agency's competence to organize a partner review mission only at the request of the state concerned, which owns a nuclear facility. The agency has no right to request its own, let alone impose its missions on other countries. As for the request, Russia has not received any request of by the AIA Secretariat. We have seen only the statement regarding this in the public area. As for the Russian nuclear facility, what Ukraine has to do with it, we do not know. As for the next visit to Russia by EIA Director General Grossi, we do not rule out that could take place at the end of May. And the second question. The Japanese Foreign Ministry published annual Blue Book on Diplomacy report, which once again uses language about Russia's illegal occupation of the southern Kurils, and once again expresses concern about increased Chinese-Russian military cooperation. How could you comment on that? You say annually, and once again, I don't want to waste time reading multi-page documents with old-fashioned wordings, because every year the foreign minister of Japan publishes multi-page documents with old-fashioned wordings, and do not want to reread this. I would like once to remind official Tokyo that the Southern Kurils are an integral part of the territory of the Russian Federation on legitimate international grounds as a result of the Second World War. They were enshrined, above all, in the Charter of the United Nations. Russian sovereignty over these islands is not only indisputable, it is in principle not the subject of any discussion. No report can change this reality. No book, blue books can change this reality. As for the passages expressing concern about the strengthening of cooperation between Russia and China, we advise Tokyo not to worry. If they want to speak about cooperation between some sides, it would be legitimate and appropriate for Tokyo to assess its own cooperation with other countries. If Japan could speak about its cooperation with Beijing, we would understand that. If Tokyo shared information that could be used by its economic operators that destroyed the ties with the Russian Federation, it would be useful to speak about, and this information could be of interest to the Japanese people. But why Tokyo is interested on the relations between Russia and the other side, it's not the topic that should interest Tokyo. Military cooperation between Moscow and Beijing is an important component of the Russian-Chinese comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation. It contributes to ensuring the security of our countries and maintaining stability in key regions of the planet, while not targeting third parties. The close ties between the armed forces of the two countries are based on deep mutual trust, the special nature and unprecedented high level of interstate relations, which in terms of their effectiveness surpass the military-political alliance of the Cold War era. The cooperation between the parties is carried out in strict compliance with international law, is absolutely transparent, and is not of a block or confrontational nature. Now I'd like to ask official Tokyo whether Japan can speak about something similar. Moscow and Beijing have a similar assessment of the processes of transformation of the global geopolitical landscape, share the same or similar positions on fundamental world problems, and are equally committed to the principle of indivisibility of security. Against the backdrop of stalled global governance mechanisms and laws of U.S. dominance in world affairs, Russia and China are working together to create fairer multipolar world order based on the principles of equality of sovereign states and open and mutually beneficial cooperation. At the same time, I would like to point out that we compelled to follow most closely the increasingly military training activity by Japan in the vicinity of our borders, including the involvement not only in the United States but also the extra-regional players from NATO, the arming of the self-defense forces with the United States cruise missiles, the dismantling of pacifist provisions of country's constitution, and development of discussions on the deployment, including the archipelago of the United States intermediate-range and shorter-range missiles. In this circumstance, we will continue to take all necessary measures to further strengthen Russia's defense capability, both at the national and through the cooperation with friendly countries. If Tokyo has a question why we are concerned with these ties between Japan and NATO, at the same time, we believe inadmissible to interfere in our relations in security with China. I would explain. I've said it repeatedly, and I want to repeat it once again, that our cooperation with China, like also with other states, are not oriented against others. We are strengthening cooperation, security, and we implement tasks of mutual interest, not the political, not neither at the level of public rhetoric and practical measures. Do we have wordings for countering this or that state or defeating others regarding countries, peoples, and so on and so forth. And this is the things that the West is always engaged in, including in its relations with Japan. The wording on defeating strategically and deterrence is applied to Russia and China on the side of the West, of the collective West, and they do not hide that they cooperate with Japan also based on this task. This is a principled categoric difference. And we have a third question. How do you assess the outcome of the recent state visit of Japanese Prime Minister Kishida to the United States? We have paid attention to this visit. It was nothing new about this meeting, but there were anti-Russian outbursts voiced by Prime Minister Kishida that seemed to be largely aimed at the domestic audience. According to media polls, the Prime Minister ratings have already fallen below 20%. There is almost nowhere else to go. Apparently, the Japanese administration is looking for options to solve the pressing domestic problems in the most banal way, to go to overseas patrons in the hope of scoring points for itself on anti-Russian and anti-Chinese rhetoric. This is cheap, but they cannot do anything better. This has already happened to Kishida's predecessors, and apparently it has become fashionable in Japanese politics. It's hard to say. Nevertheless, of course, Kishida's speech to this Congress didn't come unmentioned, where he made insulting remarks about Russia's alleged nuclear blackmail. This not only just untrue, especially it's not just false, especially in the attempts to draw some kind of parallels with the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is yet another blatant evidence of the willingness of the Japanese authorities to face historical truth, to question the authorship of these tragedies in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. During his week in the United States, the Japanese Prime Minister could have spent time visiting a branch of the National Air and Astronautical Museum. What for, I would tell you. It has an Enola bomber which dropped an atomic bomb on Japan, and it is on display there. Whether it would be of interest for Kishida to visit this museum, but it was not the purpose of the visit, apparently. It was just designed for false information for the general public. Isn't this a political servility of the current Japanese administration one of the main reasons for its low ratings? For our part, we are closely following the discussions on Japan's possible accession to U.S. nuclear missions. This attitude of official Tokyo, which seems to have forgotten not only its pacifist postulate but also its anti-nuclear principles, is undoubtedly capable of moving the world in the Asia-Pacific region close to an extremely dangerous line.
Thank you, Russia Today. Are you with us? Russia Today is always with you. Thank you very much. We have three questions. First and foremost, I have a question regarding the meeting in Brussels in the format Armenia European Union and the United States. In this regard, we started receiving messages that some military political agreements were reached then. What do we know about this, and how could you comment on this? Some, as you say, some information, some data, they are called leaks. Previously, Yerevan publicly assured that the development of cooperation with the West is not directed against third countries. Given all these factors, we expect a clear reaction, a clear response from the Armenian authorities to the information that we received. In the ideal scenario, we expect that they will disavow that. At the same time, we will not be surprised if it turns out that the plans outlined in the document titled Building Armenia's Defense and Security Resilience, which provides for the replacement of the Russian military base and Russian border guards with American, European Union, and NATO specialists and experts expanding the subversive work on Armenia's border against Azerbaijan and Iran, as well as the re-channeling of Armenia's critical infrastructure and energy system with the dismantling of the nuclear power plant, were indeed imposed on Yerevan by the representatives of the United States and the European Union during this high-level meeting in Brussels on April the 5th. It is obvious that Washington and Brussels has set the goal of breaking the entire array of ties between Armenia and Russia, both in the sphere of security and economy, undermining the mechanisms of regional security and economic partnership based on the CSTO and EAEU. The West also seeks to quarrel the closest neighbors of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Iran, Russia, and Turkey, no matter how beautiful their words are. And no matter how often they say that they care for peace in the South Caucasus, Armenia is not only an instrument with the help of which the United States and the European Union want to foment a new big fire. This is what they can do. They cannot settle the crisis. They cannot put an end to the bloodshed. They can only quarrel the neighbors and undermine their ties. It is naive to believe that the above-mentioned Western measures will somehow strengthen the defense capability of Armenia, will increase its border security, and ensure its economic prosperity. On the contrary, they are seeking to deprive Armenia of everything national, national defense, national economy, national energy. Instead, they want to give Armenia unimplementable roadmaps, paper plans, and other endless futile and empty rhetoric. And after having played around with this, when they when they achieve their self-serving goals, as they have done it many times with other countries in different parts of the world. Unfortunately, we have already gone through all of this, including in the post-Soviet space. When they are done with Armenia, they will abandon it. By the way, if we speak about energy in the same Eastern Europe, including Lithuania, the West also insisted on abandoning the Russian peaceful atom under the slogan of struggle for ecology. They were intimidating with the help of the nuclear catastrophe, and people were buying this. Some were supporting the future of ecology, some of them were only believing the Americans, and now the Lithuanians are buying the energy 3 times more expensive. Time has proved that Russian peaceful atom technologies are the most advanced and reliable in the world. We are ready to continue providing them to Armenia. Do you have any other questions? We have a question about Moldova. The census began on April the 9th. From the very first days, we were hearing calls for citizens to identify themselves as Romanians. They were openly heard. It is horrifying. This is a story at the level of some medieval tales. Many medieval tales were later rewritten because they were malevolent, they were not good and kind tales, but they were merely horrific. This is a horrific medieval tale. Let me cite some facts. It is an artificial Romanization of Moldova, which is literally being carried out online along with Russophobia. And this artificial Romanization has become one of the foundations of the policy of the Republic authorities, almost all representatives of which have Romanian citizenship. The most infamous manifestations are the widely practiced appointments of people from Bucharest to state institutions, the renaming of the Moldovan language into Romanian language. Now there is a new suggestion to become Romanians. Moldovan experts openly state that the main purpose of the current census is to show that Romanians, not Moldovans, live in Moldova. The results of the previous census in 2014, according to which more than 75% of respondents called themselves Moldovans and only 7 of them identify themselves as Romanians, do not satisfy the representatives of the current authorities at all. In order to change this ratio, various propaganda means are employed: thematic spots, leaflets, video messages. Here is one of the slogans which astonished me most of all. I'm Romanian, I speak Romanian, let's fix the statistics. What is it? What does this mean? We are living in the 21st century. This is the European future of Moldova, which has been defined in this way. I have only one analogy. I have only the analogy with the 1930s in Europe. In the very same way, they were persuading people to abandon their national identity, their national culture. It resembles the recent statement of the Romanian Prime Minister Ciolacu. He said that in the Republic of Moldova, we have only Romanians. The supporters of Romanization openly urge Moldovan citizens to get out of this swamp of identity. Just imagine people who identify themselves as Moldovans, they are being told, the proponents of this forceful Romanization, they tell them that they are in the swamp of their own identity, into which they say they were dragged by force. I do not know. It is just impossible to watch all of this and to comment on this, but we have to do this just because we understand what catastrophic consequences could be, because the history has already seen such examples. This all causes the rejection among Moldovan citizens who firmly hold on to their roots and remember the history of the country, including the period of the Romanian occupation. We have recently spoken about the troubles it caused for Moldovans in the context of the 106th anniversary of the annexation of Bessarabia to Romania. This was poverty, shootings, and mass shootings of population. It is impossible to forget all these events. I won't be surprised if, as a result of what is going on in Romania now, as a protest or an attempt to save themselves, to save their lives, the citizens of Moldova will qualify what is going on as the genocide of the Moldovan people. Do you have any other questions? I have my last question, and it also has to do with Moldova. Maria Zakharova stated that, in contrast to Russia, Moldova is a democratic state where the authorities do everything possible so that the people can voice their opinion. Let's add some statistics to this. Since 2022, due to the actions taken by Maria Zakharova, 12 Russian language TV channels and more than 60 internet resources have been suspended. As we know, the state of emergency expired on January the 1st, 2024, but no one is going to bring them to broadcasting. It is obvious that their goal is to limit or eliminate opportunities to express a point of view which differs from the official one. Moldovans openly say that the leadership, the authorities of the republic, live in a parallel universe. They perceive what is happening now not through the prism of the real situation in the country, but through false smiles of European officials and countless photos, shoots in their common meetings. Maria Zakharova visited Gagozia on March the 22nd 9 and April the 10th this year to explain to them the imaginary advantages of the European integration. You know very well the outcomes. When Maya Sandu came to Chisinau, and she preferred to not to meet the protesters. It was perceived as a shameful flight. On her second visit, she found the courage to speak at the Comrade State University students, but only to a limited, selected audience, while outside, police was pushing away hundreds of protesters. I do not think that they believe that it has something to do with their own people, because the authorities of Moldova, they are Romanians, and those who have not yet named themselves Romanians do not deserve the status of the people of Maya Sandu. Let me remind you that the right to vote will be given only to the citizens of Moldova residing in the US, Canada, and a number of Western European countries. The interests of the many thousand of Moldovan diaspora in Russia are neglected. As Igor Grosso, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic, explained that the state cannot guarantee the security of voting and will interfere in it. Chisinau has forgotten that Russia has always provided the necessary assistance in organizing Moldovans voting in its territory. Let's remember the statistics. In 2022, 17 polling stations were opened in 10 federal entities of the Russian Federation. The Moldovan side did not express any complaints in terms of ensuring their security. And what is the case this time? The extent of the dissent and the disunity of the Moldovan political forces is evident. One of the deputies from the ruling party proposed to compile a list of Moldovan politicians visiting Russia in order to build a special prison for them with the European money. What does this mean? I have never read about anything of this kind in any dystopias. But these are people who believe themselves to be the civilized ones. These are absurd, crooked mirrors. The things which are cannot be imagined in a normal society, they become a reality. Moldovan citizens appreciate political pluralism, real freedom, and democracy. They appreciate it, and they see that the European project of Maya Sandu has nothing to do with this. It results into the disunity of among people and neglect to the rights and freedoms of Moldovans. Do you have any more questions? It is all for today. Thank you. China Media Corporation, are you with us? Good afternoon. We have two questions. Tel Aviv decided to make a deliberate attack. This is what the New York Post writes. This decision came after the telephone conversation with Lloyd Austin. The colleague asked not to have further escalation of the conflict. It was a new spiraling of the conflict. He called upon to preserve the composed spirit in order to prevent further escalation. How can you comment on this? What is the point of view of the Russian Federation? As you know, the Russian Foreign Ministry provided its assessments in the statement of April the 14th. They were also presented during the UN Security Council session. I would like to say, and I would like to reiterate, that we are united with Beijing. We have a similar position that we should be composed. We should exercise restraint in this situation. We call upon all the parties to refrain from all possible actions which could result into irreparable consequences up to a large-scale war. As for documents and publications regarding US-Israeli contacts, we can only ask this question to the United States of America, but after the calls made by President Biden not to Israel's not to launch strikes against Israel, I do not recommend that you ask the United States to comment on something. My second question. The United States could go from a superpower to a fading economy due to the growing influence of BRICS. These are the words of Brandon Weichert. He also noted that the American economists missed when BRICS evolved from this abbreviation to a great economy. And also, he said that they use a dollar as a bludgeon against some other great powers. Washington has itself created the conditions in order to turn the small BRICS association into something truly monstrous in the long term. How do you assess these words? I believe that the American experts are afraid of this. This is their phobia when they are writing about this deep state logics. This is only a phobia, what they are afraid of. What is wrong with the free competition? It is a norm, especially for liberal democracies, at least according to political concepts that they state and that they announce. For market economy, fair competition is the oxygen. It is the environment. It is a natural environment, a natural habitat. What are they afraid of? The answer is very simple. They are afraid to lose, to forfeit the feeling of leadership, a false one. This is their phobia. These structures, these states, who are not contaminated with this exceptionalism bacteria, they have a normal, they have a balanced position towards the free competition. It is a driving power for them as well, but not for those who believe themselves to be exceptional, that they are not under the international law, not moral values. They can do everything they want, and it is a historical truth. The development of BRICS organically fits into the framework of modern global processes and goes in line with the trends of a multipolar world. The interaction within BRICS is based on the principles of mutual respect, equality, openness, and consensus, fully meets the aspirations of the countries of the global majority. The representatives of the global south and east see it as a symbol of multilateralism and a platform where their voices can be heard. One of the key priorities of Russia in BRICS this year, during the year of our chairship, is to raise the profile of the association, to build a more democratic and a more just system of international relations. All BRICS members and also those who joined BRICS on January the 1st, 2024, have consistently advocated for the balanced development of security on the basis of international law and the sovereign equality of states against illegitimate sanctions. Bypassing the UN Security Council resolutions, the economic cooperation within BRICS is actively developing, and this is quite understandable because the recent years, the share of BRICS countries in terms of global GDP and purchasing power parity has significantly increased, and with the addition of new members, the total potential of BRICS has become even stronger. The BRICS also has significant oil stocks and significant oil resources. We should seek for new formats in finance and economy. These efforts are underway. Thank you very much.
Anna de Luna's agency, are you with us? Good afternoon. We have the question on Middle East in repelling Iran's attack on Israel. The U.S. military helped shoot down several dozens of drones and ballistic missiles, including those launched by the Houthis. Does this mean that the U.S. does not intend to draw the truth from the Middle East, or in general, how do you assess U.S. actions in the Middle East? As the questions relating to the U.S. plans for the military presence, these question should be addressed to Washington, but they have a philosophy of using the territories and the populations in their interests. The political and external political interests, I think in this situation, the problem is even worse. When we speak about American officials, not they do not only use the situation in the region in their own interest, but they've taken the hostage of this region, and it led to a dreadful escalation in the region. And in our assessment of the American policy in the Middle East, they have not changed. We believe that the current situation is a consequence of their long-standing policy of creating dividing lines in the region. We cannot destroy the UN Security Council resolutions, of course, without the legal process of amending. They cannot be abolished, but they can be failed to comply with. According to the UN Charter, they should be complied by, but other states can urge other states to not comply with them. And some provisions of the charter of the resolutions should be compliant, and they have destroyed such formats as the quartet or other negotiating possibilities. This approach largely determines Washington's line in Palestinian affairs. The